can tell, we're not back at home. We're also at the next event here on Oneida, and I had all the clips on my side to get edited for the recap, and they don't work, file corruption. So we're gonna do this again, even though this is 2 months ago on the James River. But recap video for the first Bassmaster Northern Open on the James River. Didn't go so good for me, and maybe Kenny would maybe say the same thing for him. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna break down rods, reel, line, baits, maybe some strategy, that kind of thing, and what we went into it, and maybe some of the stuff that we learned about our areas and stuff like that. So first off, we're gonna throw it over to Kenny and see what he thought of this tournament.
What's going on, guys? We just wrapped up the James River Bassmaster Open. It was the first one in the Northern Division. I ended up 141st out of 225, and not super happy with the outcome, but definitely learned a lot. And every time I go to the James River, I get a little bit better. And one of these days, I'm just going to put it all together and have a really stellar tournament. But this time, practice was decent. Never really got on a big fish pattern. I just kept hoping and kind of crossing my fingers that the females were going to start showing up in the areas where I was catching smaller, what I assumed were male buck bass, and just never really worked out like that for me. I started out really good in the tournament. Day one, I caught a big one right away. It was like 3 3/4, which is a really strong fish for the James River. And I know there's giants there too, but that's really a good tournament fish. Didn't see a whole lot of those in practice, so I was pretty encouraged right away. Sort of stuck with that pattern that I started out with, which was throwing a 1/2 ounce jackhammer chatterbait, and I had the 4.5 inch Aresental tactical swimmer on there. And what I was doing was targeting mud banks that had I call them arrowheads. I think the locals just call them reeds there, but at any rate, it's like an emergent kind of arrowhead looking type of vegetation that grows on mud. And sort of the big deal was to try and find where there was good current coming through. And right away on day one, when we showed up there, it was down in my area, which was maybe 40 miles away from takeoff. There was a pretty good incoming current at that time. This one is a 7'2" medium heavy power glass rod. It's a Mojo Bass glass rod, and then I threw it on a 7/3-1 Daiwa Tatula reel. That's just an awesome combo. I love having that glass rod because it allows the fish to kind of play, and a lot of people have problems with fish coming off on chatterbaits, myself included, but ever since I switched to this rod, seemed to keep them on a little bit better. And also like how far I can cast too. Like this rod loads up nice, and you can really launch a chatterbait along the way. So started out pretty good, caught a bunch right away. Ended up having a limit, I think, within the first hour or so, and then we just went calling from there. Ended up catching one other big one on day one. It was another one that was right around that 3 3/4 range, and that was on this Strike King KVD 2.5 square bill crankbait. And what I was doing with this was with a little bit higher tide, I was targeting lay down trees. Again, current was important, and they seem to only feed on the good times of the current, according to the tide. And so this one I was throwing on a 7-foot. They call it a medium heavy moderate action, and it's specifically a crankbait rod that St. Croix makes. And threw it on a 6/3-1 Daiwa Tatula reel. Sort of secondary patterns, things that worked a little bit better in practice than they did in the tournament. I caught a couple in the tournament on this Finesse Jig. Just got a little speed crowd trailer on there. I was throwing it on a 7'3" Victory medium heavy power St. Croix rod. I had a 8/1. I like that little bit faster gear ratio on my jig rod, and thrown it on 20-pound line. yeah, if you guys want to check out any of the tackle that I just shared with you, you can go to omniafishing.com and check it out. I'll put some links down in the description so that you can easily find all the things that we just talked about.
So for me, long journey from North Dakota all the way to Virginia. Never fished a tidal water fishery. I've fished rivers before, don't get me wrong, but I've never fished tidal water where I went up 3 or 4 feet during the day, and that threw me for a loop the first couple days. And then what I was hoping or planned on is that fish were really going to feed on the current, or the tide, excuse me, what they normally do, but we actually hit it in pre-spawn and then I believe spawning action. There were some guys that caught them sight fishing and stuff too. So when I got there, fishing was good. I was catching them. It was getting, for me, I thought it was good, 15 to 17 pounds a day, and then it progressively got worse and worse and worse. Well, mainly because I thought I was running new water, and then I ended up fishing in basically a community hole. But I went back a couple days before the tournament. I didn't have hooks on or anything, or I did, I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 days, but I was fishing behind guys, and what I was catching them on was the same thing I'd thrown all week, and I was fishing behind guys and catching them. So I was confident that I would be able to do that. Come tournament time, I believe that the fish went more into spawn mode, even though it was 3 or 4 days after, you know, I'd caught some fish behind guys. They went into spawning mode, and they actually pulled off the bank and were spawning, and so I moved too fast over top of them. So what I was using for the most part all week was and shout out to Kenny because he gave me this idea. This wasn't my original idea, but a Strike King 2.5 square bill. Kenny might have talked about it or whatever, and so he gave me this idea, and I was cranking laydowns and stuff with it. I don't throw a square bill much at home, and I don't throw crankbaits much at home because we have so much vegetation that it's hard to do that in some places. But yeah, I threw that square bill, and I had a shad pattern one right away, busted off the lip, and then I grabbed this one. But this is the one that I fish mostly in practice and in the tournament. Now, again, you saw the video, didn't get any bites on it, but in practice, this is what I covered water with, and was able to catch fish off of laydowns deflecting this thing as well. So coming to the tournament, you saw I did get one fish on day one, and when I first came in and started practicing, this was like, I was super excited about to be able to do this, and actually caught fish on it, and only fish I caught. It was a spinnerbait. Now this is an accent spinnerbait, I believe. I was using the 1/2 ounce covert spinnerbait by Booyah that Jason Christie designed. It's got a different headlight wire. I broke it because I'm banging around stuff, caught quite a few fish on it in practice. Oh, thin wire spinnerbaits got more action, and I cast it and broke it, and it was pretty beat up. So nobody had that spinnerbait, so I went to the local tackle shop, and this is a 3/8 ounce, so it's a little bit lighter than what I would normally like, but it's all about the orange blade for me. The water was dirty, and got to have some kind of Colorado, Indiana wide blade to keep it up in the water column, because I was basically floating it through some of that laydowns and stuff. Chartreuse and white, good dirty water color, and then we've got a Aresental, what size is this? Aresental 5.5 inch tactical minnow on there. Kenny turned me on to these Aresental swim baits. I'll pull one out here and show you. A couple years ago, it's a company that he actually partners with. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they work really, really good and are sneaky good on the back of a chatterbait for skipping. That's how I first found out about them. So I jokingly call them the skipping minnow. But I know I never, hardly ever, 90% of the time it works all the time, throw a swim bait or a paddle tail or any kind of trailer on a spinnerbait. The reason for this was I was on a big, bulkier presentation, and I also wanted to keep that spinnerbait up in the water column, not like underneath the surface burning it, but slow rolling it and kind of having it roll over logs and stuff a little bit better. Just adds more bulk to it. So here it is. I used the same color to match the spinnerbait. You could have thrown a white one on there and been just fine. This color is affectionately called chartreuse shad. Awesome little jobbies. Even use them on a jig head for walleyes when we are filling the freezer. So that's the two baits that basically I did use a drop shot a little bit. But the MVP of the week, and I'm glad I got a couple of them because I used a lot of techniques for it. I did a video on the Cast King channel talking about this rod is basically my Swiss Army knife in my arsenal, and that is the Cast King Spirale. This is their 7.4 medium heavy. This is a 70/30 composite rod designed by Cliff Crochet, MLF angler. And then we've got a Bassmaster Elite 6:6 gear ratio reel. Most of the time if I'm spinning or swimming something with the reel, I have a lower gear ratio, like a 6:6. And this is, I don't know if you can see it behind me, very parabolic bend. So that way these fish, it allows you to make a lot of cool slingshot underneath casts. Instead of having to whip it in there, you can just kind of sling it in there. That's why a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait or something like that works really good. But it allowed me, when a fish got this, again, I've talked about it before, it's a slower, I think it's moderate action, moderate fast, so it's a little bit slower rod. So that way fish engulfs this thing, the rod loads up better and they eat it better. I ran this same rod, reel combo with the spinnerbait, with the square bill, even a chatterbait and stuff like that. So I finished 220th out of 225 boaters. Obviously dead nuts last. I came in with 1 3.5 or so pounder on the first day, and then didn't get a single bite on the second day. We had some we had some motor problems, which messed up the day anyway. And then we went back to our original area from day one, and we just never got a bite. My co-angler and I never got a bite, so it was tough. Tough pill to swallow, but I'm excited to be here on Oneida. I was on the right, looking back on it, I was on the right fish, you know, that 3-pound quality, you know, bring in 15 to 17 pounds a day. I would have made a check, which would have been really cool, but I didn't adjust with it. And like I said, I think those fish went to spawn, and so all these moving baits were going over top of them. So we learned a lot. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys tune into the practice, tournament, and recap video for Oneida. We're kicking off the tournament, so go ahead and check out those videos, and we're excited to get after them again. So thanks for watching. Enjoy the series. Make sure you follow Kenny and myself on all our social media platforms. Let us know in the comments what you think of our new series, Road to Pro. We're excited about it, and we're just, you know, excited to be able to share these experiences with you. So thanks for watching Road to Pro on the Preston Outdoors channel. We'll see you later.